Hello, so I'm going to go over some tips on spicing up the resume a little bit. This is a resume that somebody sent me, asked for some advice, so I just went and filled in my handle and stuff for instead of their name, kind of anonymized it, so to speak. So looking at this resume, a few things that I notice here if I scan down is assuming that this information was all correct and this was the first and last name and what have you. Then we get in here, we have the company name, the position, the dates. These dates were lined up whenever I received this resume, but now they're off because I kind of made some edits. So just full disclosure on that. So right here, worked as full stack developer, mainly focused on Angular, blah, 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 right? So what's going on here is it's saying what the person did, which for a lot of entry level kind of stuff, that's probably good enough on a resume. Like if you really don't want to spend a whole lot more time on it. But ideally, especially these days, the idea is we want to set ourselves apart. And that type of a line isn't necessarily going to be like super horrible, but it's definitely not going to be like, oh wow, this sounds like very active and enticing or anything. You know what I mean? It's just simply stating what this person did, or if it was my resume, what I did at this position, right? So that's kind of obvious. Like worked as a full stack developer, mainly focused on Angular, blah blah blah. I mean, it gives a little bit of insight into it, but yeah. So with the resume, the two primary target audiences, the two gatekeepers that handle this are going to be the ATS, the tracking system, and a recruiter. At some of the bigger tech companies and whatnot, you can expect that recruiters probably have a little bit of technical knowledge, maybe, but it's not good to assume so. If there's something specific to that job you're applying for, like if they're like, hey, we really need somebody who knows Angular and, make sure everybody knows SQL, whatever, they'll know stuff like that. But otherwise, you can't really expect them to know what this stuff is or how it applies to this job. Like they might have to go look up Angular or, you know what I mean? So the best way to save that hassle is to first of all tailor the resume to the job description. So if you have a job description and it mentions like requirements, Angular, something like that, then go ahead and throw in Angular once or twice in these bullet points. Maybe if you have a summary up here, a summary sentence, which I kind of recommend if you can fit it in there, is a summary sentence or two, and basically just like what you are, what you bring, and what position you're applying to, so that it sort of like sets the stage for, they don't have to go in here and dig in and be like, oh, okay, this person's a software engineer. What was it they applied to again? You know what I mean? You're just like anything to where you can sort of cater to that human aspect. And in that what you bring part of that summary, the what you are, what you bring, what you're applying it to, right? And that what you bring, if they say, the job descriptions like we need an Angular developer with SQL skills and whatnot, you might put that in there. And if you see those words multiple times throughout, see those terms multiple times throughout the job description, then go ahead and sprinkle them a couple more times in here. But otherwise, they should really go down towards like a skills section at the bottom of the resume, towards the bottom anyway. Because the main thing is to get past that ATS system, which is just going to do a keyword scan for the most part, and then also for the recruiter so that they can scan it and be like, did they have Angular skills? Okay, yeah, it's down there in skills. There it is, Angular, right? So they can just check that box. And then the by the time it finally gets to like a hiring manager or whoever that probably, the more and more technical people that would understand stuff, they can also discern what you're talking about from the skill set, and they're going to ask you like in more detail about this stuff. It's sort of like this is a springboard for asking further questions, right? So this resume right here is pretty good as far as like it doesn't seem like it's trying to be too wordy like some of them are just a wall of words that are like trying to explain all this junk about the position and everything. So this one's doing good so far on that. Um, What I would recommend here is instead of that, I would do like another, like I'm just going to copy this little email icon and try pasting it right there. And I would just do something like that with the LinkedIn icon. Of course, you'd have to go locate a LinkedIn icon off the internet, which like it's pretty hard to do with Chrome or Chromium these days, but with like I could go to like linkedin.com, but it's pretty easy to do with Mozilla Firefox still. So when we come here, we could see they have this little icon right there. So what I can do is click on this lock, and it's kind of buried in here. You go to should be on site information, but instead it's on connection secure, and then you click more information, and then click on this media tab, and there you can see right here. That's a 64 by 64 icon. What's this other one? That's the background image. Okay, so what we'd want to do that is select save as, and then I could just save this somewhere, right? I could just save this to like wherever. It looks like it's saving as a HTML, so I don't know whether or not. Anyway, that's one trick. Let's see here. Oh, another trick is I could just hit print screen and on the PC, and that's gonna like take a whole bitmap image, and then I can open up Paint here, and I'll just Control V to paste it in, and then I could just like grab the icon, like literally just grab it like that, and I'll give it a Control X to cut it out of there, and I can get rid of all this stuff, and I can come over here, and maybe it will let me paste it. I'm really not the best person. I'll probably start cussing here in a minute because, let's see, did that do it? Oh, it looks like it tried to do it. Maybe that's not the best way. Let's see if I can get that to resize. So if I go full, looks like it's tiling it. This is LibreOffice, by the way. It's like a Microsoft Office clone. I'm using version 7.1. There's probably a newer version by now, but I'm using the Writer program. Okay, so anyway, there's the LinkedIn thing. Oh, wow, that looks weird. I think that's just an artifact. So I'm going to right click it and say position and size. Let's see. Width. So let's keep ratio and shrink it way down. I don't know how big I'm going to go. Let's go way down like that. Okay, that was a little too small. Try one more time. Position and size. I probably should have practiced this before I came. So it looks like about a third of the size should do it. I don't know. That's not working. But anyway, whatever you got to do to get the LinkedIn icon in there, I think that would be more ideal. And then for this thing, for this URL, it's clickable. I like that. Because there's a 50-50 chance that whoever's viewing it will be able to click it, unless of course they print it or they're viewing it in some weird system that won't let them. But I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to edit the hyperlink. And what I could do here is just, instead of having the linkedin.com blah blah blah, say I did have that icon properly formatted, I could just put the name that's in that URL right there. And the idea there is then it's a lot shorter, right? Picture like the ideal LinkedIn icon and then just my name. But one tricky little thing to balance with that is to go in if you have to and edit. You should be able to edit your the directory, the folder that your profile's in, right? So your profile folder, so to speak, I guess, and change that to where it's a lot simpler to type. So I would just change it to like veganese instead of whatever like garbly gook it might have. And if your name's already taken or it's a common name or something, then put like a dash 123 or something really simple and easy to type after it to make it unique. And then just use that as your like, it'd be like veganese 123 or something like that, right? And then that would become, so then it would be like LinkedIn, and then it's sort of like your username. I don't know. There's sort of a balance between that to where you want to make it clickable, but you also want to make it easy to type and searchable. So if your name's unique, you could just use your name, and then they don't have to worry about having like 50 different people with your name, blah, blah, blah. Of course, make your email clickable too. Um, I probably wouldn't do the clickable tell link for the phone number. You could, I guess it wouldn't hurt, but I don't know what the chances of somebody viewing a resume on their mobile and then even having the ability to click it if they did. Okay, so then what happened here is this person, the one of the other major obvious things that sticks out is this. And this is like a huge no-no is definite, and some people will do it with like all the text and just like gradually shrink it down. That's illegible, right? You really want the text pretty much close to that. That's 11 point. I think some people even say use at least 12 point. um, but whatever. I feel like this is big enough. Maybe you could even go smaller to like a 10 point if you really had to. But this is like, if you've got to do that, then just delete it. You know what I mean? Either work it in with another bullet point or delete it if you're just trying to fit your resume on one page. It's just not worth doing that. That just looks so unprofessional. And I had told this person to make all their bullet points the same size, but I think they thought I was talking about these actual bullet points. But when I say that to people, I mean make the description after the bullet point. But even that being said, it looks like these bullet points are actually different sizes, so you'd want to try and get those the same size too. But they probably made it Microsoft Office. I imported it into LibreOffice, so there's also a chance that some of the formatting was off because of that as well. But yeah, so if you do need the space, one thing is, so there's like three major ways to sort of divide the page up, right? So you can go with like a heading, that like all caps heading like that. That works really well. Then you can do a horizontal rule, a horizontal line like this, and then you can also do white space like you see up here. So this is really utilizing all three of those techniques, and that's eating up a ton of extra space because I mean it looks nice and it makes the page sort of like well spaced and everything, but it's unnecessary. Usually it's the opposite case, so I see where people are cramming stuff together. But anyway, that being said, I can just like delete this whole line like that and just do something like that. It would be nice if this white space was above this little, let's see, I triple click that. I honestly haven't used like an office type of program in so long. I shouldn't even be messing with this. So there's alignment, text flow, tab, borders. Um, what do we got here? That's a padding? I'm just gonna see. I think that might have given it some space. But what's weird is it didn't show the... Okay, so that's the space. This must be like an underscore character or something. Yeah, so if I do that, where was I? Paragraph, um, paragraph, and then I'll go ahead and add some more to the top there. I don't know. I don't see that doing anything. I guess that's not a paragraph. But anyway, it's just a high level overview right now. I'm not trying to get into the nitty gritty. So of course for this spacing should be even for these. I mean, if you have to just manually eyeball it or whatever, then that's better than nothing, right? At least make that conscious effort. But ideally, there's a way to go in and make that happen. I don't know if it's like right justify. See, when I write justify, then it does that too. So like I said, I suck at this, and I can only give like the high level strategy, not like the low level tactics on it. Um, yeah, so worked as a full stack developer, mainly focused on Angular, Java, and RESTful services. So I would try and take that one level deeper. But like I said, if it's more of an entry level resume, that's probably good enough. But let's say for here, like that one, okay, let's just leave that and not worry about it for now. Participating actively in sprint planning to prioritize stories and testing the application. So what happened? What happened by participating actively? And like participating in actively is almost just like struggling. That sounds desperate to sound like active. So participate in sprint planning to prioritize stories and testing the application. So one thing is keep your tensing exactly the same. So this should be, if it was going to stay the same, it would be like participated in sprint planning to prioritize stories and tested the application, something to that effect, right? But what we'll change this to is um, oh man, let's take it. Usually I can think of these like right off the top of my head. So participate, of course it takes a minute, right? Participate in sprint planning to prioritize stories and test the application. Yeah, I probably just that wouldn't sound right with tested. So you could say test probably in that situation. So it'd be like, what's the more high level business outcome of that? Like, I'm going to pause it and think about it just for a second so I don't feel so pressured. Okay. So I think maybe like maximized sprint throughput. Maximized sprint by prioritize, excuse me, stories by working closely with stakeholders to prioritize stories and deliver uh, I'm going to say maximized value delivered each sprint. And I'd say use some punctuation in here too, because if it just reads like one long line that's like word, 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 especially if they're like a little bit fancy 3-syllable words and stuff like that, break it up. So maximize value delivered each sprint by working closely with stakeholders to prioritize stories, whatever. Of course, give that a couple more iterations and it could probably be even better. But what's going on there is it's impact first, which is maximize value delivered each sprint, what it was measured by, working closely with stakeholders, and what was done, what was the implementation, prioritizing stories, right? So that's the general template there. And then so with this, like let's say we got rid of this. Oops. Huh. Can I center that with this thing? Center. Okay. And it doesn't have to be centered. I just was trying to keep it more consistent with that one. So we can get rid of that line on each of these. Center that. And that's going to give us some white space down here at the bottom. And then we can take things like this and look, okay, I clicked on this line. We've got 11 point times font. So I could triple click on this. Why is that not 11 point? Bizarre. I don't get these programs. Okay, it looks like it's got this subscript checked here. So I'm going to uncheck that. That's the problem that was going on with that junk. It's got the subscript attribute. So click on this one, get rid of the subscript. This one, get rid of the subscript. Same thing for all those. Um, and look at that. It all fits on one page by getting rid of that extra space in here. And honestly, if you didn't want to fudge with it anymore, you could probably, well, let's fix that one too. Make sure that it's still on one page, looking good. And then the other thing, these are far right justified, which I don't get. Default paragraph style. They really could make these Office programs easier to use for people, for noobs by now, I feel like. Um, But yeah, ideally those should line up with this stuff down here. But if nothing else, as long as they line up in their section, they're probably all right. So I'll just push them over. How far are we down there? We're all the way as far as we can go. So about that far. I'm gauging it against this line right here. And then with this, I want to line up that M with that O. Definitely don't want it to wrap. I've seen that a lot. So I had to back it up one space, so I'm going to back that one up one space. I think that's close enough. Maybe there. I don't know. I'll just leave it there. That's good enough. Okay. What else do we have here? Yeah, I would just definitely do that. The impact, what it was measured by, and what was implemented. I would try and apply it to the majority of the bullet points. That's 11 point normal. What's this? Bullet point. Okay. Weird. So this one's this other kind of justification. What happens if I do that? Uh, I'm going to try and just make these consistent justification here. That one's left. Because these ones are all left. I'm triple clicking to get the whole line at a time. If these aren't consistent, sometimes it does show up. I didn't really notice those ones for sure. We're still on one page. We're still doing good. Okay, so for one thing is if this is printed, this margin is a little bit tight right here. That's just something to keep in mind. If you have access to a printer, print it up and see if that doesn't get cut off. Sometimes it might get shrunk to fit on the page. I don't know. I haven't even printed anything like this in a long time myself. One thing to avoid too is the quote unquote, like, see how this says header right here, like, which is above that line. Don't, this is good because there's nothing in that real header, right? Like, you don't want anything up there that will likely get eaten by an ATS. Same thing with the footer down here. Like, you don't want anything in that footer because this footer down here, that will get eaten too, most likely. You just want it in this main content of the page. And don't bother with page numbers. Some people do that kind of stuff. I personally, for one, it should only be a page, maybe two. Um, especially for non-college kind of applications, software engineer and all that. Oh, and by the way, I'm a total idiot, so take all of my advice with a grain of salt and compare it to lots of other advice too. Um, yeah, I think that's otherwise this resume honestly looks pretty clean. It needs a skills section, so like I said, I would probably like unless these certifications apply to what you're going for, I wouldn't even put them. And if you do consider using the expanded form of any acronyms as well as the condensed form, so like, where's another acronym? There's not a lot of acronyms used on here, which is good. I wouldn't probably use a expanded, like, there's a few acronyms I wouldn't use the expanded form, like RESTful State Transfer. I wouldn't. I don't think that that one needs to be there. But these things like CSA, CSSA, I would do that. I would write like whatever it is. I don't. Those certifications look familiar. But look, let's say that people called Lean Six LSSC or something. Then I would do that, and then in parentheses I would put like LSSC if that's what it was commonly referred to, which I don't think it is. But just as an example. Anyway, I'll just wrap this one up there, and thanks for watching.